The Democratic Party needs a wake-up call. And what are the very people here elected to defend the Constitution of the United States saying, oh, well, today, let's look the other way and pass some resources that won't go to Connecticut, that won't go to Illinois, that won't go to New York, that will go to the states he likes? That is complicity with an authoritarian leader who is trashing our Constitution.
That, of course, was Cory Booker blasting fellow Democrats on the Senate floor on Tuesday, accusing them of being complicit with President Trump's policies.
The New Jersey Democrat objected to the bipartisan police funding bills co-sponsored by Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar and her colleague Catherine Cortez Masto and Republican Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. Let's watch.
This, to me, is the problem with Democrats in America right now, is we're willing to be complicit to Donald Trump to let this pass through when we have all the leverage right now there is to say, if you're as passionate about police as we are, then pass bills out of this body that will help the police officers in Washington, that will help the police officers in Illinois, that will help the police officers in New Jersey, that will help the police officers in New York. Don't be complicit to the President of the United States.
Booker, who might well be a potential candidate for president in 2028, slammed law firms, universities and corporate media for bending a knee to President Trump. Let's listen to that.
I see law firms bending a knee to this president, not caring about the larger principles, that those free speech rights, that you could take on any client. Why are you bending the knee? I see universities that should be bastions of free speech bending at the knee to this president. I see businesses taking late-night talk show hosts off the air because they dare to insult a president. I see people who want mergers suddenly think that they have to pay tribute to this president.
GOP Senator Kevin Cramer reacted to Booker's outburst on the Senate floor against his own party. Here's Cramer on Fox Business calling the Dems leaderless.
And so you have pragmatic Democrats that want to get things done, particularly policing bills that come out of committee unanimously, strong bipartisan support. And then you have the other side that strictly sees that as a victory for Donald Trump. Right now, they seem to be a little bit leaderless, and consequently, the kids are fighting.
Yeah, I mean, this is an age-old dilemma. Do you go along with the majority party so that you get kind of something you want? A lot of those Dems in those states, Klobuchar, et cetera, want funding for police. Should you go along, or should you, totally fight, resist, not go along, and then you don't get anything, but then you deprive them of a win, but then Republicans turn around and say, well, we were trying to give money to the police. The Democrats are against that. Their slogan was defund the police as recently as 4 years ago. You want to vote for that? It seems like that's the more politically perilous thing to do than to just go along. So I also don't think, I don't have anything against Cory Booker. At one point, he was one of the Democrats I liked better than others because I liked his education policies were a little bit more friendly to my libertarian views on school choice. He kind of dropped that whole thing, and I don't know that he, righteous anger sort of, it came off a little fake to me, but that's critiquing a performance, so who cares? But he's probably wrong about the politics there. I don't know.
So the thing about Cory Booker is that I think one often ends up debating his performance, like the Spartacus moment and all of that. And, I, like you, tend to think that it can come across a little bit forced or contrived as a performance. Now, of the clips that we played, the one that I had greatest sympathy for was his argument about institutions bending the knee to Trump. I'm not sure if I would exactly articulate every part of it the same way he did, but I do think that law firms and universities and the Paramount case are all strong examples of that, and so it's fair enough to raise it. Where I was a little bit more uncertain was this issue of the policing, the disbursement of money to police forces. I noticed that Klobuchar sort of pushed back and essentially said to him, you didn't show up for committee hearings where you could have made this like, you could have tried to mark up the bill in the way that you wanted. She framed it very slightly more subtly than that, but that was plainly what she was driving at. And then that criticism in turn gets into the idea that is Booker more interested in sort of trying to create these moments than he is in trying to shift the policy one way or another. Now, I get that a lot of Democrats are very angry about what Trump is doing. I get that a lot of grassroots Democrats want to see the party's elected representatives push much harder against Trump. The problem that they have over there on Capitol Hill is they don't really have much power. They're in the minority in both chambers, so there's not a whole lot you can do. So Booker's, I think, trying to synthesize or articulate that kind of anger. Whether it leads anywhere beyond its sort of performance, I'm not too sure.
Look, Chuck Schumer is not the right leader in the Senate for this moment, I think. He's not a strong enough personality. He's very traditional in his thinking.
An institutionalist.
He's an institutionalist. He doesn't have that many of his own views, or is well known for. I'm sure he has his own views, but is well known for, like, this is the thing. He's like a Bernie Sanders, who he's all about economic inequality and populism and getting more money for the working class. To the extent Chuck Schumer has a thing like that, honestly, it's support for Israel, which is certainly not politics that are fitting this moment.
Certainly not among the Democratic base in particular.
Right. So I see why Cory Booker is trying to be more vocal. The Dems, they should do like a debate series or something where they pick a couple people representing a couple different trajectories, the Democratic Party. Like, what do we actually have to wait for the 2028 primaries to work all this out? Maybe it'd behoove them to do it sooner than that.
Yeah.
Just pick a direction, get some feedback from actual voters, from actual people in the country for what they want them to do. Because do they want them to just, scream into the wilderness with no power, but at least they sound angry? Or do they want them to work with Republicans to get more funding for police or whatever, wherever they can? Do they want moderation? Do they want temperamental outrage but policy moderation? Do they want temperamental moderation but policy outrage? I don't know. They gotta figure that stuff out.
I actually think your idea of a debate series is quite a good one. Not that you're generally in the business of giving advice to the Democratic Party, but I think
I can help moderate it if you want.
I think you should be on.
You would do a good job.
You should be on stage between Bernie Sanders and who would be the voice of moderation? Pete Buttigieg or something. Actually, talking of Buttigieg, and to your point about the debate, I saw an interesting comment from him. This whole discussion has been beset by very typical Democratic infighting. Buttigieg was on some podcast just within the past couple of days, and he was talking about Zoran Mamdani. And Buttigieg's point was that those policies that Mamdani is advocating are obviously not going to be a particularly great fit for all sorts of parts of the country. Buttigieg is now a resident of your native Michigan, of course, having moved from Indiana. And he was saying essentially there are still things that can be learned from Mamdani's kind of style of communication that could be transferable to other policy platforms. To me, that's a legitimate point. I don't think that it is fair to reduce Mamdani just to a guy who's good on TikTok, but I think that his communication strategy was very good and was fused with what the Democratic electorate in New York wants. I hope, mature enough to think that what the Democratic electorate in New York wants is not necessarily what the general electorate in Pennsylvania wants, or Michigan for that matter. But Buttigieg got kind of dragged, at least on a lot of the tweets that I was seeing, for just sort of diminishing Mamdani or suggesting it was all a surface level thing. And so the Democratic circular firing squad, I think, is underway here, which is a bit unfortunate in my view.
Dems in disarray.
Dems in disarray once again.
Yeah, Mamdani was obviously gifted in terms of the communication strategy this time around. I would say his style of communicating 4 years ago, which I pointed out was very much not good just tweeting things that were popular in 2020, not so much now. But just being willing to talk to people on the street or make videos, whatever, shows a lot of freshness and an energy that it would behoove Dems to adopt, and Republicans as well. And successful Republicans have done that.
Absolutely. Next up, President Trump is calling for an investigation into Nancy Pelosi and blasting Josh Hawley's bill banning congressional stock trading. Stick with us, we'll be right back.